Hey, this is John, and this is a test of the Canon RF 16-28 f2.8 IS STM lens compared with the Canon RF 15-35 f2.8 L IS USM lens. In this first series, I'm looking at focus breathing as I'm moving around the back deck here. What you'll see is that both lenses do have focus breathing, especially as I move very close to the lens. It might be a hair smoother on the 15-35 than on the 16-28, but it is present in both. Now I have zoomed into 24 millimeters, so I'm going to compare each lens at 24 millimeters. Results are pretty much the same. So why compare these lenses? The 15-35 f2.8 L has been around for a while. It's excellent glass. It's also big, bulky, heavy, and has all those kinds of attributes. The 16-28 is super small, compact, very lightweight, and while it's not L glass, Canon promises L glass quality. So why don't we look at this next test where I am at f11, comparing each lens at 16 millimeters and then 28 millimeters, looking at the flare as I tilt up towards the sun and then tilt back down. Both lenses look very similar, and that's great. It's kind of proof that you're getting close to L glass quality on this 16-28. The flares look somewhat similar, might be a little more dampened on the 16-28 than on the 15-35, but both really look excellent. Some other aspects in comparing the two lenses that will not be obvious from a visual test. The 16-28, the manual focus ring is better dampened. Now that said, it doesn't have a dedicated manual focus ring. It's the ring on the front that can be customized, but it is much better dampened than on the 15-35. So if you are going to do manual focus, it's actually easier on this smaller lens than it is on the 15-35. The other thing to note is the 16-28 is a little quieter than the 15-35 in terms of focus noise, and that's even with an STM motor where the 15-35 has a USM motor. This next test, I'm just checking for parfocal, focusing zoomed all the way in and then zooming out and then zooming back in. I found that both lenses hold the focus in this case. Now I'm gonna claim that they're fully parfocal. I didn't test every setting, all that kind of stuff. I didn't stop at in between focal lengths, but at least in this quick test, they held the focus very well. Now we're going to turn to some handheld tests. In each case, each lens has its IS on. Each lens does have built-in lens IS. The digital IS is on in the camera in standard mode with motion vector turned on. That means that the IS uses the camera's gyroscopes to help stabilize everything. What I found in all the tests, and you'll see this going forward, is that the 16-28 to me seems a little smoother overall, and that's whether moving forward or panning or tilting up, tilting down. Doesn't matter what it is, but the lens IS in combination with the camera on the 16-28 does seem a bit smoother for handheld work. Another aspect to touch on, and I think you'll see this if you freeze some frames, hopefully it translates through YouTube, but I found the 16-28 to be a little sharper overall than the 15-35, which is just wonderful. It's also interesting to note that there does not seem to be a loss in contrast between the two lenses. Often a less expensive lens will have less contrast or less of what I would call a micro contrast, making images appear a little flatter. Maybe they don't control the flare or highlights as well. But I think you're saying in these comparisons here where I'm moving around this plant, it would be hard to distinguish the lenses from each other image-wise, very hard. In this next example, there's a lot of detail all the way into the corners, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the overall sharpness. And again, the look and feel is very similar on both lenses. It's probably important to note that the 16-28 does require some in-camera corrections in terms of the optics, but one would be hard pressed to really see that as a fault here. Everything looks perfect. If anything, the 16 to 28 things are a little truer than on the 15 to 35. To sum things up, I find the 16 to 28 is quieter in terms of focusing, has better IS than the 15 to 35. Its manual focus is better dampened, and it's a little sharper overall. The advantages of the 15 to 35 is that it does have less focus breathing. What it does have seems to be a hair smoother than the 16 to 28. It has a dedicated focus ring. It's also L glass. While both lenses are weather sealed, it may be a little better sealed or a little better constructed on the 15 to 35, but then again, that lens is more expensive, twice the weight, and probably more than twice the bulk. What Canon has done with the 16 to 28 is actually pretty phenomenal. It really looks to be a great lens. That's it, and thanks for watching.